Good day, beautiful, bountiful, beloved, immortal beings, and good-looking people. Remember, you're good-looking. You're always looking for and finding the good. We found good in abundance because you have conscientiously tuned into Hug America podcast with America's greatest storyteller, my dear friend Neal Foard. That's Foard, Ford, and the ambassador of joy, Barry Shore. And we are just so delighted that you tuned in to invest your most valuable possession, your time, with us, because you know that it's going to be fun and uplifting and beneficial and maybe even cause you to cry or laugh, because that's what we do. We touch you because you touch us. You said you love stories. Well, we have the greatest, America's greatest storyteller. We're going to focus on one of the more interesting aspects of the human experience today, and that's called family. That's right, Family, family. And whatever language you're listening to or you'll say familia or family, whatever language it is, because it all means the same thing. Close, intimate relationships with people that you may or may not want to be with. That's my definition. So I'm the ambassador of joy. I was going to begin with something, but I'm going to just turn it over right away to wonderful Neal, who is in a hotel room in Portland, Oregon. Last time we were together, he was in Moline, Illinois, and he's just going to share with us some story right off the top of his head, or maybe from the bottom of his heart, about family. And it can be anything to do with family, with love, feuding, getting together. Who knows what he's going to tell us? But
Yeah,
you got a story, Neal?
I do indeed. And it's about what it is to be a father. You know, the role that you think you play in the father in the as a father in a family is to be the protector, the provider, and so forth. But what I did not fully appreciate very early when my kids were quite young was the degree to which you model a certain kind of behavior, and they watch that and then they mimic that. Human beings are tremendous little monkeys. They mimic everything they see. And we were at Disneyland when my children were quite small. Let's just say that they were about 5 and 7, and I was kind of a stress monkey because, the park is very expensive. So I was sort of burnt over how much it costs, and then the parking is difficult, and you have to sort of navigate your way around, and it's hot and crowded. And lucky for me, in spite of the fact that I was grinding my teeth over all of these issues, trying to make sure that I was keeping track of the children and the crowds. The ticket taker, as I was handing the tickets to my family one at a time, and they would go through the gate, everything was going smoothly. And then when it came to me, the turnstile stopped and wouldn't let me through. And I was, like I say, I was a real stress monkey, Barry. And I sort of looked at this guy, very hostile intent. And he leans in and he says, "I'm not letting you in until I see you smile." And, I was in no mood though, Barry. I mean, somebody says that to me and I just went, like, that was the best I could do. And he goes, everybody's going to have a great time today. Trust me. But they'll have a much better time if they know you're having fun. So I thought, oh, he's right. So I gave him a real smile and he let me through. And I walked about 10 feet or so. And then I turned around to sort of thank him. And he was still looking at me. He'd waited for this, for me to turn around. And I went, "Thank you." And he goes like that. And I thought, oh, you know what? He's seen this a million times. The dad thinks that his role is to keep everybody together and keep them safe and make sure everybody's got a ticket. And, we're going to go from this ride to this ride, not realizing that what the kids are really hoping for is that everybody just has a good time, including dad. And in that sense, I think that fathers, they model a lot more than they realize. Let's say, for example, that the way that you treat your spouse, if you treat your spouse a certain way with a high degree of affection and lots of touching and love, and you don't speak down to them. You say nice things to them. Well, what happens is your daughter grows up with an expectation that that's how men are. And if they don't get that from a man, then they don't think of them as a man. They don't settle for that because that's not how men are. A real man does this for his spouse. And what's more, I gave my daughter the job after that experience at the park. I gave my daughter the job of saying to me, when I was getting stressed out and not behaving kindly to people and so forth, she was supposed to let me know, Dad, you're being too stressed out. And it was such a great system, because I'm not sure I would have reacted quite as well if my wife said, Neal, you're being awful. But when your daughter tells you,
Right.
when your daughter tells you, it's so heartbreaking that you just go, I'm changing this very second. And in that sense, fathers and sons, fathers and daughters, mothers and sons, I think we have this impact on one another that we're not fully aware of. We're modeling all the time. And we've got to be very careful to be our best selves, especially around our children.
I love the story on so many levels. First of all, I wrote down a number of pieces because you talked about father to begin. So let's be blunt. The word family is spelled F-A-M-I-L-Y. F-A of the first two letters in father. So father is, even in today's world, we're calling this is 2023. So you may be watching this in 10 years, 20 years, a century from now. Even in today's world, father is still a place that you can gather around, just like what family is. And I love the idea of modeling and mimicking, because if you are putting out stress into the world, well, guess what? Intellectually, gee, that's just not good. And yet your emotion is just ripping you apart because you can't get over it. And it takes the ticket person or the gatekeeper, the turnstile keeper, to allow you to know that, psst, I need a smile. The ticket to get into Disneyland is not measured in dollars and cents. He was telling you it was measured in a smile. That's the currency of the world. One of the reasons you listen to Hug America podcast, it's the first three letters of the word happy or happiness. And that's what we deal in. And understanding that the currency of the world is really that smile, channel of goodness, keeping what we call a shift in perspective. Now, Neal knows this. My latest book is called Oh, Shift. And I've been working with people for more than 42 years. I can tell you 97.2% of all people who begin to work with me, they drop the F and shift when they pronounce it, and the other stuff happens. Because you got to really keep all that stuff together so you have a shift in perspective. And all it took was a little bit. It was Neal's daughter saying, Dad. In other words, they had this, like in baseball, the signal between the catcher and the pitcher. I mean, that's what you did, because we had a baseball sequence a couple of times ago. So it's that signal, and his daughter actually could have just pulled on her right earlobe. Didn't matter. It was the ability to communicate. That's what family is, in my humble opinion. The ability to communicate, and as you said, having it come from your daughter rather than your wife just made it that much better, because it allowed you to shift.
Well, yeah, I think people are conscious of the fact that they want good things for their children, and if your son is warning you, Dad, you're getting angry and it's just winding you up, there's something about it's a very protective gesture on their part. They're actually trying to help you, but what really it does is it helps you be better to them. I wish I had. Well, I guess I got the benefit of getting that lesson pretty early, because they were so young. But even still, you get so few years with a child that when they're children, that it's a good thing to know when they're.
This is wonderful point, by the way. What you're saying now is the ability, first of all, to have children, and those family. Family is an extension of two beings coming together and growing. Now, whether you have them biologically, you adopt them, whatever the mechanism, And by the way, oftentimes even people who, for whatever reason, don't have children of their own, but they're part of a larger familial group. Family doesn't just mean, let's say, a husband and wife and 2 kids and a chicken in every pot and a car in the garage and such. But it's an extended situation, because when 2 people marry, you're actually marrying the other people's family also. So you have aunts and uncles and nephews and grandmas and grandpas and all kinds of things. I want to make mention, since you said the word father, well, when I was thinking about our topic today, I just cannot not say what I'm about to tell you. So that's a very big wind up in the pitch to what I'm about to tell you. Because one of the phrases that I was blessed with growing up, it's funny because I am Jewish. I don't know if everybody knows what this thing is. This is called a kippah or yarmulke. I'm Jewish. I'm very Jewish. I grew up with a phrase that's called the family that prays together stays together. Now, why do I say that? Again, the family that prays together stays together. We didn't pray together as a family. However, that is one of the most famous phrases that was promoted by one of the most interesting Catholic priests that I ever knew. Now, I didn't know Father Patrick Peyton, Peyton. I only know him through a great documentary that actually a friend of mine produced. But he was the one who went around the world touching tens of millions of people. This is in the 1960s. Tens of millions of people around the world in his speeches and such, because he was that cog. He was a child of God. And he recognized he was there to serve. He happened to also be headquartered in Hollywood in the time of people like Frank Sinatra, Bing Crosby, and Loretta Young, and people that are just names today. But his phrase, the family that prays together stays together, he created what I call an evolution, he would call a revolution in families. And it made a difference for decades for people. Okay, we don't have that today as much. But here's a side note that I'm going to make Neal smile. Here's your ticket to my Disneyland. The phrase, the family that prays together stays together. Father Patrick Peyton had a friend, nice Jewish guy, who was a copywriter. and on his own, the copywriter says, Father Patrick, I love you. I just want to share with you an idea that I got because I listened to you. Because he had a radio broadcast also. And he came up with the phrase, the family that prays together stays together. That became Father Peyton's trademark.
Oh, yeah.
Written by a nice Jewish guy, copywriter. So
wouldn't be the first time, as you know, only too well. It's funny that there was an old saying. They said in Hollywood in the 30s and 40s, it was the Jews trying to sell Catholicism to the Protestants.
I want you to repeat it because I want everybody to hear it.
I can't remember where I got that, but
it was good enough.
Hollywood was the Jews trying to sell Catholicism to the Protestants.
Right, because the Protestants were the bigger, the basic white America.
A bulk of America.
And Catholicism had great values. Now, let's be blunt. 2023. And again, if you're watching this now, you're going to watch it 10 years from now, 50 years, 100 years from now. People will still be watching this, Neal. A century from now, they're going to scratch their heads. Hopefully they have heads. And they're going to say, well, that's interesting because we did have a revival in America. Thank God. Because without a revival in America, they may not be in America. There'll always be this geographic place that lots of people live in that is bound by 2 oceans and such. But whether or not we have an America that we know of, which is a very values-based, in my humble opinion, family-oriented country. And one of the few in the world today still. And we've had several how should we say it? Reawakenings in America, revivals. I just want to make mention of something, though, that I'm going to also get you to smile and comment on. So I have a dear friend from Nigeria. And if you don't know where Nigeria is, by the way, because most Americans are very geography challenged, as are most people. So you can Google it today or do anything, search it. It's in West Africa. People know that there's a continent called Africa. Nigeria is a very physically large country with almost 200 plus million people. and divided by religion is Christian and Muslim. But all in all, the country does very well. It's very rich in oil and mines and a lot of engineers. Anyway, my friend mentioned to me recently that he learned from his grandmother, who lived to 103, an important idea about family. She said the following: see, family is the closest relationship you'll ever have. And you're going to always have fights in the family. She said that. Always. I mean, that's it. But then they don't have to be lasting longer than 38 seconds, and don't let them last 38 years, which does happen in some families. And she said, you know what it's like? It's like your body. It's your teeth and your tongue. Now think about it. Your teeth and your tongue are the two closest things in your body that touch each other, right? Sometimes, oftentimes it happens for me, you bite your tongue inadvertently with your teeth, right? Sometimes you bite it so much that it even bleed. But you don't get mad at your teeth and hit them, knock them out. You resolve it and say, well, okay, that's cool. That's wonderful. So think of your family like your teeth and your tongue. Okay, you're going to have stuff happen, but it's all close. So I'd like you to comment on that, if you would, dear Neal Foard.
Well, I'm not sure I have much of a comment about that. The family life is a complicated cocktail of competing interests and jealousies and rivalries. The thing that I find it most astonishing is that children who beat on each other for 8 or 9 years wind up being so dependent on one another when they grow to adulthood. It's very reassuring when you think about it that you can have family members literally beating each other up for most of their childhoods, and yet they're ferociously devoted to each other. So there's something biological at work where we are.
So I'd like to mention to you what you just said, because it's so true and it's wonderful. I mean, if we haven't experienced it, we've all seen it. Sometimes families only have one child. I have 3 in my family. I'm the oldest. I'm a boy and 2 young sisters. And I wouldn't say we beat each other up, but we certainly did stuff together and yet we are extremely, thank God, wonderfully close, even though geographically we're separated. But again, I think it's like what the grandmother said, it's like the teeth and the tongue. It's stuff happening, and you're ferociously devoted because you can't deal with one. You can't have one without the other. If you just had your teeth, but you didn't have a tongue, you're not going to speak. If you have your tongue, you don't have your teeth, as older people have, and they don't get tantrums. You can't eat. So the combination of things that seem to be against each other become attached, as you say. And I love that word, ferociously.
The way that cultures handle families differently is interesting. For example, I'm an enormous fan of this show on Netflix called Indian Matchmaker. Have you ever come across this, Barry?
No, I'd like to hear though. I'm interested in I'll call off the beaten path ideas.
So the show's premise is based on the idea that in India for quite some time and right up into the present, arranged marriages are quite common, and it's really 2 families deciding that they want to get together, and the children's suitability to one another. They don't trust the children. I don't know if that's really the right word to use there. The sense is that the adults, having lived long lives and having achieved certain things, they have a better sense about who would be a good mate for you than you do.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's a pressure test. They'll most of the time let you meet your spouse. But I have heard of contemporary colleagues of mine who didn't see their bride until the day of the wedding. So compatibility was a gamble. Nevertheless, in the experience that I have heard and on this program, these couples stay together for decades. So the divorce rate's quite low. And all of which is just a way of saying, there's more than one way to skin a cat. And sometimes I think we get fixated on our own culture as the one true or the only way to live. But when you see the devotion of these these husbands and wives, decades down the road, having been arranged marriages where they weren't sure what they were going to get. It is interesting to me how people can adapt quite readily to almost anything. And I, I think we load up in our Western culture, in American culture, we load up too many expectations on our spouse about how they're going to solve all our problems, or they are. I think what we would need to do is treat each other as husband and wife, or husband and husband, or whatever. I think we need to treat each other like teammates on a long journey. And you don't put an expectation on the other person that they're going to solve all the problems. What you do is you say, I'm on an adventure and I'm on it with you, and the two of us are going to face a lot of challenges together. But as long as we stick together and we lean on each other and we're good to each other in tough moments, and we know we can trust each other, and we know we can rely on each other, now you're not facing the world by yourself. Now the adventure is a lot more easy to bear. I think one of the great secrets of family is that the number one disease is loneliness. But if you have a family, even if you don't have a mate, if you have the rest of your family, at least you're not alone, and you never will be. And I think there's something to be said for this arranged marriage thing, in the sense that, okay, this is how it is. This is what I've got. So you, the spouse I've never met, are equally blameless in this to me. Like, the two of us are just going to have to go, well, we're in this together now. We both got, they shoved us together. So in other words, they haven't loaded this big burden on their own backs. Like, I screwed up and now I'm angry because I made the wrong choice, and you're taking it out on them. And what happens many times is they'll abandon one spouse, attach to another, only to discover that one doesn't solve all their problems either.
So let's use this as the launch pad for this amazing idea. Again, mostly in America today. I won't say it was when I was growing up, but mostly American today. That someone else is there to solve my problems. Do you hear me? I'm laughing. Because if that is your expectation, in other words, people use the term soulmate. I'll talk about it in just a moment. But if the expectation of someone being that there is another being that will solve my problems, well, that does not bode well for something called marriage, family, continuity, and success in life. Because you are part of, like you say, a team. Now, Barry Shaw loves acronyms. Team stands for, in my vocabulary, together, everyone achieves miracles. That's a real team. Together, because by definition, like you said, wonderful Neal, will there be stuff happening in life that is untoward, unusual, unexpected? All the uns. That's what life is about. It's about the uns in life, correct? And now you use the T word. The T word is the critical element in family. You said it, trust. When it comes to it, the family unit and the extended family has unwritten the T word, trust. Because when the two people are put together, the young man, young woman, in the case of India at the moment, it's an extended family on either side. And it's probably not small. It's not 6 or 7 people. It may be, it's dynasties. And whether it's done because they have a lot of what people call trappings of wealth, or just villagers. That's not the point. The point is that you're marrying into families. So the opposite, of course, is that unique situation that's been around for time immemorial also, called Romeo and Juliet. We had two people who were soulmates, lovers, not looking to solve each other's problems, but to unite as one soul, but two families that were at each other's throats.
Mm.
So we're talking now, and I love in the Indian, by the way, in the Jewish world as well. In the Jewish world, in my particular aspect of the Jewish world, arranged marriages, or at least not so much arranged fully, but at least, how should we say it, encouraged marriages by two families. Because yes, the reality is, excuse me, we've been around, we know more than you. And it's not just us, it may be father, mother on both sides, and grandparents. So we've been around, we've seen the unexpected, the untoward, the unusual and such. And by the way, if you use your hormones to direct you, well, that's good for about 3-6 months, maybe a year. But now what do you do? So we want to go above that, because we all know that just dissipates. That goes away.
By the way, on this show, Indian Matchmaker, this woman who is the matchmaker, they call her Auntie. Oh, gee, I wish I could remember her name. But for the sake of argument, we'll call her Auntie Priya. She is completely disillusioned with the demands that most of the young people come with, the long lists of qualifications. And she will often, you can see it in her face as they're saying, well, I want him to be fit, and he must be quite tall, and I would love a big head of black, luxurious hair, and I want him to have a wonderful sense of humor. And also, if he makes a lot of money, that would not be a bad thing. And I need for him to have an advanced degree. And I would also like to make sure that he's very outdoorsy, and he must love my animals, and so on and so on. And you can watch this woman's face as she's thinking, you are smoking crack, girlie. And we'll say, you will be luckier than lucky if you get 70% of that list. I think a person needs to lower their expectations. And these people are astonished that they can't get everything they want. And
wait a minute, this is amazing, because what you're saying is, I think, that even in India, in quotation marks, that the influence of, well, these are the things I want because these help solve my problems. If I have these things, I have a wondrous life.
Right.
Yeah, I'd be happy. And I'm going to go back to the word you used, because we talked about before, and you found it to be very interesting. And I want to be finishing on this high note, avoiding loneliness, because the word alone is terrifying. But if you understand it the way Barry Shaw does, which I mentioned to you before, don't say the word and read it alone, A-L-O-N-E. Read it all one. When you recognize that what you're here for is to become part of a team, and that is the way that you are part of the all one, that oneness in life, and it can be shared with another, and God willing to increase the other from just the 2 to 3 to 4 to 5, whatever the number. That is not only the benefit to your life and long life and a happy life and a fulfilled life, but it's based on trust. Like you said, wonderful Neal, the T word, because if you have trust, you can have transformation. You can be the happiest person in the world. And that list you look at it, God willing, in 5 or 10 years and laugh and say, well, that was silly. Thank you, Auntie Priya. Okay, we have just a minute. So you got 30 seconds, sir. Share with us an insight into family in 30 seconds.
I want to go back to the idea that we are all of us individually, we're on an adventure. Our life is limited. It's a single ride. And if we treat other people as partners in this adventure rather than rivals, I think what will happen is we'll discover, and I don't mean we're treating others well so that we'll be treated well. I'm just saying that is going to be the result. That if you treat each other like we're on an adventure, you're on yours and I'm on mine, and I'm going to try and make yours better, I think what we're going to head for is something a lot more satisfying.
And on that note, we're going to do our hug to the world. HUG stands for heartfelt, unlimited giving. 1, 2, 3. Hug America. Best wishes, everybody.